Massive triceps are an extremely underrated muscle group for developing bigger arms. Triceps, making up approximately 2/3 of the upper arm, are largely responsible for the overall size and development of them. And if you're looking to maximize your tricep development, you want to make sure to not be like the average gym goer, who relies solely on curls and forgets to target the triceps. And if you're looking to maximize those triceps specifically, you really only need 4 movements. First is a heavy compound to allow for maximum progression over time. If you're a beginner or intermediate, this is especially true. But if you're an advanced lifter with a solid strength base, you can focus more on isolations and less on compound lifts for the triceps specifically. The second movement is a heavy loading tricep isolation exercise. This movement will allow us to isolate the triceps, but expose it to some heavy loads, which are largely responsible for the growth of the muscle. The third exercise will be one that trains the triceps directly with an emphasis on the fully stretched position. This will cover the benefits of training the target muscle in the stretch position for hypertrophy. And number 4 is one that does the opposite, focuses on the contraction of the triceps to maximize the pump of the muscle. If you're a beginner or intermediate, I recommend you focus on the first 2 exercises at the very least and up to all 4. If you're an advanced lifter, you might only need to focus on the last 3, and you can potentially steer away from the first compound lift a bit, provided your strength base is built. But let's jump into the exact exercises. Number 1 is a compound pressing exercise that targets the triceps to a larger degree than a traditional press. That can be a close grip bench press, dips, or a declined neutral grip dumbbell press. This movement will be responsible for developing the strength and the mass to the triceps, while the next 3 focus on targeting the triceps through a full range of motion, taking advantage of each angle. For me, close grip bench press was always a staple of my training, and I've taken it as high as 385 pounds, which as a result has made my triceps one of my strongest body parts and has helped with the development of my arms over the years. Dips can also be used here, but for someone with shoulder issues or discomfort on this movement specifically, I've always preferred declined dumbbell presses with a neutral grip. Regardless of which exercise you choose, this first movement should be thought of as your primary focus in the early stages of lifting. But just keep in mind that as you develop, it won't be the only exercise needed to maximize your progress. Number 2 is a horizontal tricep extension. Great movements here would be skull crushers with barbells or dumbbells to heavily load the triceps. This movement will serve a similar purpose as the first lift, but it's an isolation exercise rather than a compound. The benefit here is that the target muscle will be the one that's trained near failure, whereas on a compound lift, like close grip presses, you can potentially be hitting the shoulders and the pecs just as hard. And if you have stronger triceps, it might not always be the limiting factor. Skull crushers and tricep extensions are key for training those triceps near failure with a relatively heavy load. And besides heavy presses, I'd argue that skull crushers are one of the exercises most responsible for my tricep development over the years. Number 3 is an overhead tricep extension to train the triceps in the fully stretched position. Overhead tricep extension is essentially the same movement as something like a horizontal extension, like skull crushers, but only when we perform tricep extensions overhead are the triceps fully stretched at the bottom position. That stretch being the main benefit of this exercise is something you want to make sure not to neglect. And I'd argue with a movement like this, you would want to prioritize that stretch over just chasing more weight. If you simply keep adding weight to the bar on overhead tricep extensions to the point that you cannot keep technique the same, over time, you'll likely lose out on that deep stretch and in turn, miss out on more progress in muscle mass due to not taking full advantage of the stretch component of the lift. And number 4 is a basic cable press down to focus on the triceps in the fully contracted position. So far, we've used a heavy compound, a heavy isolation, and a movement to focus on the deep stretch. The icing on the cake is a massive pump to the triceps, and nothing pumps more blood into the muscle than a movement with a hard contraction. If you train triceps multiple times per week, you can spread these movements out evenly across the week. Or if you train with a typical body part split, you can include all of these in one session, and that'll maximize your tricep training and cover all areas. If you're unsure if you're training for full development, just remember this: load the muscle, stretch the muscle, and squeeze the muscle, and fill it with a ton of blood. And if you want the exact training programs that I recommend to build muscle using proven old school bodybuilding methods, check out my mass gain programs down below. And as always, if you want to see more of the best original bodybuilding content just like this, make sure to hit subscribe.